I never imagined space junk could threaten our flights. How long until disaster strikes us all? The day it all began was like any other day. I remember sitting in my usual window seat, sipping a lukewarm soda, the faint rumble of the engines filling my ears like a comforting lullaby. But then, the captain's voice sliced through the calm. "We are experiencing some irregularities." My heart stopped. Each word felt like a crack in the glass of the calm facade we were all clinging to. The plane started trembling, not just the usual turbulence. This felt different. I glanced around. Faces were shifting from boredom to fear, eyes darting around. It was like a movie, a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. I could feel my hands tremble as I gripped the armrests. There was a distinct sense of urgency in the air, thick and suffocating. I closed my eyes, remembering why I was flying. My mom. She was lying in a hospital bed, her frail body fighting a battle I could only watch from the sidelines. I was racing to her side, praying I'd make it in time. But now all I could think of was the chaos outside that plane. What if we didn't land safely? I wanted to scream, to shout out my fears, but I was stuck in a paralyzing silence. And that when the captain surrendered to the panic brewing in the cabin. "We're going to make an emergency landing." The words splintered the air, a flash of hope amid despair. But then came the chaos. A distant sound like a giant wrenching metal. Gasps echoed through the aisles. What was happening? I could feel the plane jolting. It was like we were trapped in a wild ride, one that no one signed up for. Fingers raced across keyboards in the cockpit. The lights flickered and buzzed eerily. Was space debris really striking us? The thought gripped me. I could picture it. A jagged piece of metal soaring through the vastness of space, ready to rip through our fragile lives. The world seemed to be spiraling out of control as I sought connection in the eyes of the passenger across from me. But fear overshadowed everything. It felt like a dark curtain falling over us all. The plane dropped abruptly, and my stomach flipped, sensations blurring into terror. I caught a glimpse of the wing through the window, the flaps spread like a bird that didn't know how to land. Had we lost stability? I could taste the bitter salt of tears pooling in my throat. Just a few more seconds. Breathless moments slipped away, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. The silence became unbearable, punctured only by the distant whir of the failing engine. How could this be happening? My mom was waiting for me. I needed to be there. My heart raced faster than the plane, pulsing with urgency and desperation. Then, a sudden boom. A piercing light flashed in my peripheral vision, casting shadows across desperate faces. I was sure we were crashing. My body tensed. I let out a silent scream into the void. All hope seemed lost in that brief moment of impending doom. And just when I thought we were done for, the voice of the captain came through, steady but strained. "Prepare for impact." I gripped the seat again, my knuckles white. What awaited us on the ground? Would I see my mom? Was this the end of everything I cherished? Time hung heavy as the reality of our fate dawned on me. A chilling riddle of uncertainty that loomed larger than the cosmos itself. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The moment we hit the ground, the impact was jarring, reverberating through my bones like a thunderclap of terror. The plane skidded unceremoniously, metal shrieking against the runway, sending us into a tailspin of panic and chaos. The cabin erupted into an uproar, cries of fear intertwining with the blaring of alarms and the acrid smell of smoke. My heart pounded in my chest like a frantic drummer, drowning out all rational thought as I hung on to the remnants of composure to end that harrowing second. I thought of my mother again, her fragile smile, the way her eyes crinkled when she chuckled. I wanted so desperately to hold her hand right now, to assure myself that everything would be okay. But this tumultuous tangle of angst and despair felt like a storm ready to swallow me whole. The evacuation slides inflated with a deafening hiss, beckoning us to escape the wreckage. Pushing my way toward the nearest exit, I stumbled against frightened passengers, each of us trying to outrun the looming specter of death waiting behind us. I felt a tug at my sleeve. A girl, maybe 10 years old, her eyes wide and wet with tears, was almost swept away by the chaotic crowd. She was small, fragile, like a tiny bird in a storm, and in that moment, her fear pierced my heart. "Please, don't leave me," she cried, her voice cracking like broken glass. A wave of dread swept over me. How could I abandon her? Bending down, I offered her my hand. "Come with me. We will get out together." The girl's little fingers intertwined with mine, offering a sliver of strength amidst the overwhelming fear in the cabin. Together, we managed to shuffle down the aisle, ducking under the panicked swarm, the realization driving me there was still hope in this mess. Her presence reminded me that even in the darkest moments, there are still sparks of light ready to guide you forward. As we reached the emergency exit, I glanced back for one heartbeat, scanning the faces around me. Disillusionment was plastered across many of them, confusion mixing with desperation, but I also noticed a couple, their arms wrapped around one another tightly, soothing each other in this whirlwind of chaos. An elderly man, with a steadying hand on his wife's back, whispered, "We'll be okay, love. Just breathe." Finally, we burst into fresh air, the sunlight feeling blinding against the backdrop of chaos. I could still hear cries behind me, but we were free from the confines of the plane. The ground was littered with scattered debris, fire teams rushing toward us, but all I could focus on was the girl at my side, trembling like a leaf but still standing, a testament to the strength found in vulnerability. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, kneeling to meet her eyes. She nodded but looked up at me, eyes shimmering with tears. I was scared. I thought I'd never see my mom again. In that moment, I felt the weight of my own fears disappear slightly. "Let us find our families. Okay? We can do this together." Beneath the chaos, a thread of connection pulled us closer, weaving hope through our shared fragility. As we began to move away from the wreckage, sirens wailed around us, creating a symphony of anxiety. I looked around for familiar faces, but my heart sank as I realized I had no clue if my mother was even aware of what had just happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fumbled to pull it out, praying for a text from her, any sign that she was waiting. But when I unlocked the screen, it was a notification from a news outlet. "Flight 327 emergency landing. Details unfolding." The headline struck me like a lightning bolt. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking, dread clawing at my throat. Across the street, I spotted rescue workers, their radios blaring, trying to maintain order amidst the chaos. Grabbing the girl's hand tighter, I made my way toward them. I needed guidance, needed to know that help was forthcoming. Suddenly, a stranger approached us, his eyes frantic but filled with kindness. "Are you two all right?" he asked, crouching down to our level. "We need to get you to safety." Before I could respond, my phone dinged again. I hesitated, caught between reassurance and dread. But as I glanced at the screen, two words made my world tilt. "Mom is missing." I froze, the air around me swirling in disbelief. The noise of the world dimmed, and the girl's grip loosened in my hand. Everything faded into the background, the reality of my situation sharpening into horrifying clarity. I was not just losing hope. I had a new fight ahead, a fight against the looming unknown that had taken her from me. I staggered back slightly, the world collapsing around me like a house of cards. "No, no, no," I muttered, shaking my head as I desperately tried to drown out the announcement ringing in my ears. "She can't be missing. She can't." My vision blurred, tears threatening to spill over the edges. I had pictured my mother waiting for me at the terminal, her easy laughter cutting through the madness, and now that image seemed to dissolve into an abyss of uncertainty. The girl, sensing my distress, squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked, her innocence clashing starkly against the terror of the moment. I just I need to find her, I whispered, my heart racing with rising panic as adrenaline coursed through my veins. My mother's gentle voice echoed in my mind, always soothing, always there until she wasn't. The stranger remained crouched in front of us, his features softening as if he understood how heavy hope could weigh in moments like this. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "You'll need to tell the responders about your mom." "Lily," I managed to reply. "All right, Lily. My name's Chris," he said, nodding as if he could see the storm brewing within me. "We'll find a way to get information. But first, let us get you somewhere safe." He signaled for us to follow. Together, we weaved through the chaos, the girl at my side, her fear palpable yet somehow comforting as we both leaned into the vulnerability of this moment. I was bewildered by how quickly my world had shifted from the thrill of anticipated travel to navigating the reality of loss in mere breaths. When we reached a temporary shelter set up for passengers, the scene was frenzied. Families were separated, each person frantically searching for their loved ones, while emergency responders collected names and stories amidst the rising din. I felt a sense of urgency in my bones, a primal need to scream my mother's name into the fray, but that urge was swallowed by an overwhelming grief that paralyzed me. I needed to focus. "Come on, we can figure this out together," Chris urged, gently nudging me toward a table covered with volunteers scribbling on notepads and phones ringing incessantly. Every second felt like an eternity, suspending the dread that was creeping into my chest like frost. "I need a pen," I said as panic gripped me. I could barely draw a breath. "I need to write her name down. They need to know who I'm looking for." A woman at the table handed me a pen, her eyes warm and understanding but shadowed with their own burdens. "Just write everything you remember. We'll do our best." Hands trembling, I scribbled Mom's name on the paper, my cheek pressed into the cool surface, knowing that every detail felt like a lifeline. I wrote her age and described her laughter, the tender creases around her eyes. As I wrote, I could almost hear her voice coaxing me to be brave. I was reaching, longing for a connection to her that seemed to be slipping into darkness. The little girl, who had not once left my side, tugged on my sleeve. "What if we find her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A flicker of hope ignited deep inside me. "What if?" "We will find her," I said, my voice stronger now. "Promise." Chris stood beside us, his expression turning serious. "Lily, I want you to stay close to this shelter. I'll help search, but if anyone comes with news, you have to stay here and keep this paper on you at all times." I nodded, gripping the paper tight like it was the very essence of hope and strength. "Thank you." I meant it more than words could convey, with both my fear and determination churning inside me like a tempest as he moved away. I felt the weight of silence settle heavily in the space between me and the girl. "Are you really going to find your mom?" she asked, her eyes wide with the kind of gnawing uncertainty that only children could express so earnestly. It broke my heart to see her so anxious, but her question brought clarity amidst my desperation. "I have to," I replied. "I need to believe that we can keep our families safe." The girl nodded, silent understanding passing between us as we both weathered the fear pounding in our chests. An unexpected kindness flickered through the children seated nearby, a boy offering his toy dinosaur to comfort her. A reminder that amidst the chaos, small acts of connection could ripple outward and create a web of support. But as I began to heal from the bond we shared, another notification buzzed from my phone, the screen illuminating my dark thoughts. Without looking, I knew it would be a reminder of the ever-looming uncertainty, but curiosity overpowered my trepidation. With trembling hands, I unlocked the screen. The notification blared. "Reports of the flight have been linked to unsafe debris in the sky." The world spun as I read and reread the sentence, gravity sinking into my bones. The words turned in my gut like poison. My gaze fell on the girl, who, although terrified, looked up at me with innocent faith. The moment I processed the implications of what this meant, I felt the ground shift beneath me, shadows merging in a surreal amalgamation of dread. Beneath the urgency of finding my mother, I felt the air crackle with different fears. If space debris was the cause, could it strike again? This was bigger, darker, and more perilous than I had ever anticipated. A ripple of fear coursed through me, the stakes of our survival shooting into uncharted territory. I held the paper tightly, the hope it contained now weighed down by an unshakable dread. Looking to the horizon, I scanned for any sign that could usher my mother back to me, any flicker that suggested she was safer than I feared. But beneath the chaos, the silence suddenly felt more threatening than the noise. In that fleeting moment, an unexpected realization dawned upon me. Perhaps danger had not just come from outside the plane, but from something far more enigmatic, more colossal, and completely beyond our control. And with that haunting thought swirling in my mind, I understood that this fight, this anguish, was only just beginning. The shelter thrummed with life, a living organism writhing with tension and uncertainty. Voices rose and fell in a cacophony of worry. Tears mingled with whispered prayers. With each passing moment, I was acutely aware of how fragile our reality had become, a delicate glass waiting for a cruel hand to shatter it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the fear that threatened to consume me. I have to stay focused, I murmured, but a sinister thought nagged at the edges of my mind. Moments before, I had been more concerned with finding my mother than bearing the weight of impending doom. Now that precarious balance felt ready to topple over. Lily, the soft voice of the girl beside me, pulled me back. Her wide, trusting eyes were filled with an innocent, earnest determination, and for a breath, I felt the flicker of hope that had slowly been dimming. "Do you want to play a game while we wait?" I was taken aback by her question. What game could possibly exist amid the storm swirling around us? A game? Yeah. It'll help us feel better. Like we're not just here waiting. She insisted, a stubborn spark lighting her features. I couldn't help but smile at her earnestness. The world felt heavy with despair and uncertainty. Yet here she was, trying to carve out a little joy in the cracks of fear. "All right," I said, forcing lightness into my tone. "What game?" "Let us play I Spy," she declared, enthusiasm radiating off her. "But we can only pick things that are blue." I chuckled softly, though the laughter felt foreign, almost painful. "Okay, I'll go first." I glanced around, then spotted a blue backpack lying near one of the volunteers' feet. "I spy with my little eye something that is blue." She pondered, her finger pressed against her chin while she scanned the room. "Is it that backpack?" "Yep," I said, and excitement filled the air momentarily, breaking through the tension surrounding us. "Your turn." As we threw our meager attempts at levity back and forth, the moments twisted around that blue backpack became our shared sanctuary in the madness. The innocent laughter between us morphed into a fragile silken thread that held us together, a flicker of normalcy in an otherwise chaotic tapestry. With every I Spy, my heart began to soften just a little, the clutches of despair momentarily loosened by the tiny bonds of connection we shared. Yet through that laughter, dread lingered just beneath the surface, bookshelves of worries waiting to topple over. Every time I felt a brief sense of release, my reality would crash back in a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed over us like storm clouds. Suddenly, an abrupt announcement pierced through our game, cutting the laughter short. "Tension. Passengers from Flight 529, please gather at the front. We have new information regarding your loved ones." The air changed. The room held an electric tension, and my heart raced. The girl looked up at me, her eyes wide as fear closed in again. "Do you think it's about your mom?" "I don't know," I breathed. My grip tightened around the paper with my mother's name as dread coiled back around my heart. This could be good news. Or the worst kind of news, the kind that shattered souls. As I stood to join a throng of anxious travelers, Chris reappeared beside me. "Stay with me, Lily," he urged, and though I barely knew him, his presence grounded me. Somehow I felt pulled between two worlds, the hope of discovery and the terror of what we might unearth. The line shuffled forward, and soon I was standing near the front with Chris. I could see the faces of families, etched with emotions ranging from trepidation to barely veiled desperation. I could hear whispers. "They're okay, right? What if they're not?" A child's muffled sob followed by a parent's shushing. The tension intensified around us like a rising tide. An official stood before us, their expression inscrutable. We need to clarify the status of passengers on Flight 529. They spoke, their voice steady yet imbued with an unmistakable gravity. There have been reports of debris found in the airspace, and due to the situation, we encourage travelers to remain vigilant at this time. I barely registered the words as they passed through my mind like water through a sieve. They meant something, but I was too heartbroken to comprehend the churn of reality. What debris? And where was my mother? The official's gaze swept across the crowd as they continued to speak. We have set up a recovery operation, and all reports will be relayed as swiftly as possible. Please provide your names and any identifying details. Chris turned to me, his brow furrowed. We have to stay sharp. If they call her name, you need to be ready. The weight of those words sank into my chest, a heavy stone of uncertainty. What if they didn't call her name? What if we never knew? As my heart pounded, I felt an overwhelming urge to scream or cry or run away. But instead, I clasped the paper tighter, feeling the hope and strength it represented. It felt like a fragile thread connecting me to my mother, a lifeline threading through the chaos of uncertainties. And as the first name was called in a somber tone, I gripped Chris's arm, biting back the anxiety that clawed at my throat. The air felt electric, and I dreaded the call to come. My fingers brushed against the edges of the paper one last time, praying that this moment wouldn't be the final act of despair as we awaited the fate of loved ones. A childish, innocent voice drifted from nearby, reminding me of the power of connection. I spy something blue. My heart twisted, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was still space for hope. But while I caught that glimpse of warmth, the next name called sent a shiver racing through the crowd. Someone familiar from my past. A name I had never expected to hear in the midst of something so catastrophic. The name echoed in the tense air, reverberating through the shelter like a bell tolling the end of days. It was as if the world around me blurred, everything melting away except for the reality of that syllable, a name I recognized from a childhood long gone, yet deeply etched in memories that haunted me. Evelyn Matthews. The official's voice droned on, but I was stuck in a whirlwind of panic and disbelief. Was this really happening? I felt the breath leave my body, and my hands began to tremble. To hear a familiar name in a place so fraught with anxiety and chaos sent shockwaves through my core. What? Chris leaned closer, his voice urgent yet laced with confusion. Do you know her? I don't know how, I stammered, my heart racing faster than my mind could keep up. Evelyn was my childhood best friend, the one I'd spent countless summers laughing with, the one who had swept me into adventures that now felt like dreams far removed from reality. I had lost touch with her years ago, but the thought of her being in danger was a knife to my heart. As the crowd shifted uneasily, I could understand the mounting anxiety. Names meant lives, lives intertwined with hopes and dreams, all hanging by the thinnest thread made of uncertainty. And just then, amid the chaos, I sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The little girl who had become my anchor slipped her hand into mine. Lily? She asked gently, her eyes softening. Somehow her innocence granted me a moment of clarity amidst the storm. Yes, I breathed, taking in her trusting gaze as if it possessed the power to ward off the pain swirling inside me. Do you think my dad is okay? She hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. But in that instant, it struck me how every story here was just as fragile, just as painful, tangled in fear and uncertainty. I felt my heart twist again, but I nodded, diverting my turmoil into her plight. Yes, I believe he is. We just have to hold on to hope, I said, trying to project strength I didn't wholly feel. At that moment, a volunteer approached the little girl and me, her expression earnest. Is everything all right? She asked kindly. I appreciated her unexpected compassion. It had been so easy to forget warmth amid the despair. We're okay, I managed, though I was unsure if that was true for any of us. A lot of people are working hard to understand what's really happening, the volunteer reassured us. Please keep being brave. I glanced back to the front as another name was called. Another shattered thread connecting someone to their loved one. Each call had the potential to devastate another soul, and each name felt like an unwelcome spike of worry that threatened to tear through the thin fabric of hope that had begun to knit itself around us. As I stood in the turbulent sea of emotion, I couldn't hear the names any longer. They faded into the background noise as if the universe was preparing to unleash its fury. I sought solace in small gestures around me. A mother wrapped her arms around her children, whispering comforts. Two older strangers held each other tightly, even as their grief-stricken faces betrayed the shadows lurking behind their eyes. And yet, in those moments, bright patches of unexpected kindness erupted throughout the thunderous uncertainty. I witnessed a family share their food with another, a hand offered in assistance to someone who stumbled. Those gestures illuminated the corners of hopelessness, providing silvery threads beneath the shadow of despair. But as I returned to the present, I noticed Chris watching me intently. "You're not alone in this," he said softly. "Whatever happens, I'm here." I felt the corners of my heart flicker with warmth. For a fleeting second, the bonds we forge among strangers can resemble a lifeline when faced with the unknown. "Thank you," I whispered, understanding that his strength could bolster my trembling resolve. Just then, with every ounce of dread pooling at the base of my throat, I heard the next name called, and it felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath me. Lily Matthews. Time froze and I stared, wide-eyed at Chris as he took a sharp breath. "That S.U.," he said, disbelief mingling with fear. I forced my mind to race over the possibilities. My mother? Was this a sign? Or was it more bad news shrouded in the guise of a name? Swallowing hard, I felt a pulse of panic thunder through me. My legs felt rooted to the ground as a mix of emotions clamored within me, on the brink of bursting forth. I stepped closer to the front, but as I moved, darkness lurked at the periphery of my vision. The delicate web of hope I had woven began to fray, each thread unraveling into an abyss that taunted with endless possibilities. Would I hear the confirmation I sought, or would this moment pull me further into despair? And when I reached the edge of the voices, fear danced with determination as I took a deep breath. Whatever awaited me could alter everything. With a shaking hand, I gripped the fragile paper containing my mother's name, readying myself for whatever awaited in the realm of the unknown. At the precipice of revelation, I sensed my entire world ready to shift. The ground beneath me trembling. This could be the moment that either shattered my remaining hope or bound me closer to the threadbare strands of love and connection I had desperately clung to. The air in the shelter felt charged, heavy with anticipation and uncertainty. As I stood there, gripping the paper as if it was a talisman against the chaos, the world around me seemed to fade into a blur, a low hum of voices muted by the swords of adrenaline and fear clashing in my mind. Just the mention of my name ignited a wildfire of memories, of laughter shared under the sun, of whispered dreams for the future, and of the promise that life after childhood would be bright and full of possibility. "Lily," my name caught in a breathless whisper, echoed back to me from the depths of my memory like a heartbeat, pulsating with hope and dread in equal measure. What awaited me was either a glimmer of hope or the death knell of everything I held dear. I forced my legs to move forward, each step echoing the weight of my past and the yearning I felt for my mother. The official's voice droned on, names slipping through the air like leaves carried away by a reckless wind. I could hardly focus on what he was saying. My mind was replaying every moment I had with my mother, both the joyous and the painful, sharpening every minute detail until I felt as if I was walking through a kaleidoscope of memories. "Lily Matthews," the official barked again, and I jolted at the sound. As I approached, I locked eyes with the man behind the table. His face was stoic but tender, the worry etched in his brow revealing the burden of a heart that had likely borne witness to too much sorrow. His eyes flickered, almost as if he had ventured into the abyss himself, and for a second I felt an unspoken understanding pass between us. This man was not a faceless figure. He was a vessel for emotions and stories that had collided in violent waves. Each name called was a stone cast into a lake of grief. "Your mother," he said. His voice dipped low. "Yes," but before he could finish, there was a suffocating shift in the atmosphere. A sudden collective gasp ripping through the crowd as another name was called, the name of a child who had already been missing for weeks. Panic erupted, rising in a tumultuous cloud of fear. In that moment, hope twisted into something hard to bear. "I'm sorry," the official continued, clearly caught off guard by the wave of chaos surrounding him. Your mother is. But before I could process his words, a young woman rushed forward, tears streaming down her face, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. Have you seen my sister? She was last seen. Her words broke, the remnants of hope vanishing before our eyes like smoke. The atmosphere thickened with despair, and I took a step back, feeling as if I were drowning in an ocean filled with the cries and fears of those around me, each life marked by its own stories of loss, heartache, and determination. I felt small against it all, but amidst that sensation, a thread of defiance sparked within me. I wouldn't let confusion cloud my resolve. I had to know. Suddenly, a pair of gentle hands rested on my shoulders, grounding me in this maelstrom. I turned to find the little girl, her wide, innocent eyes bouncing between the chaos and my own fear. You're brave, Lily, she said, her small voice cutting across the clamor like a beam of soft light. Thank you, I whispered, feeling a flicker of gratitude seep into the cracks of my resolve. It was the simple kindness from her that ignited a heartfelt warmth I didn't realize I desperately needed. Listen, Chris's voice broke through the haze, ringing clear with an undeniable urgency. We can't let fear drown us. We need to find out what is happening. His determination hitched my pulse, pulling me from my fog. I nodded, the weight of uncertainty still heavy, but I realized that any shred of clarity was a fragile and beautiful thing, and I wanted to cling to it. The chaos continued, names and cries intermingling in chaos, and just as I thought I had a handle on the tumult, a sudden scream pierced the air beyond the shelter, a sound filled with raw terror that sent tremors through my heart. Get everyone out. Now, a new voice commanded, dragging the attention of the entire crowded room. But where would we go? Every escape route led into the unknown, and I realized this was the second wave of despair crashing down, chasing us further away from safety. My breath quickened, panic vaulting back to the surface as I felt the world lurch around me like a ship caught in a storm. And then I heard the doors slamming open, voices scrambling in a frenzied mix of anxiety and anguish. I spun around, searching for Chris, for the little girl, for anyone. But then, like a whisper, the name I had been praying would never be spoken floated through the air. There's been another crash and accident at the perimeter. They're asking for immediate evacuation. Every hair on my skin prickled with fear. I could barely hear the echo of my mother's name now, far overshadowed by the urgency spiraling into chaos all around us. An evacuation meant separation. It meant losing the last tether I had to the hope of finding my mother. No, please, I pleaded as I pushed through the throng of people, desperation clawing at my throat. Not without the answers, but they were already moving, compelling bodies toward exits, voices lost in the hurricane of fear. With my heart in my throat, I turned to call for Chris just as the lights flickered uncertainly, revealing a shadow in the doorway, something familiar weaving between the chaos. Hope surged, only to crash back down. I couldn't let it lead me astray. And there he was, Chris, caught in the crush of humanity, eyes wide as he shouted something I couldn't hear, didn't want to hear over the pounding of my pulse. As the crowd surged around me, I felt like I was a lone rock amidst a turbulent sea, the haunting specter of my mother, still lingering as uncertainty clawed at my heart. But the shadow in the doorway shifted once more, and in that breathless moment, I felt it, a new truth waiting to be revealed, and, with it, the course of my life ready to twist once again into the unknown. The aftermath of the scream echoed painfully in my ears, the evacuated crowd moving like a tide, frenzied and disoriented. I felt the harsh pull of the current, panic tightening around my chest as I pushed against the sea of bodies. The lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of dread. Lily, Chris's voice sliced through the chaos, a beacon of clarity amidst the confusion. I turned toward him, heart racing. This was him, unwavering, despite the storm unfolding around us. Help me, I shouted, the words torn from my throat as I lunged through the throng towards him. I could see his determination, a fire burning brightly in his gaze, and it ignited something deep within me. I wasn't just a name on a list. I was living, breathing, aching, still fighting. Stay close, he yelled, reaching out to catch my hand. Our fingers intertwined, a lifeline, and I clung to him as if he were the only solid ground in this tumultuous sea. With him by my side, I felt emboldened. "Where's the little girl?" I asked, scanning the crowd, half hoping to catch a glimpse of her, her fragile courage a balm to my restless spirit. "I don't know," he replied, his voice tight with concern. "But we can't stay here. They're moving everyone to the main exit. We have to go." Every instinct screamed to find the girl, to ensure she was safe. But I was held captive by fear of losing Chris in the rush. He was my touchstone, the only connection I had left to sanity in the midst of this descent into chaos. Okay, let us go." But in that moment, another wave of fear rippled through me. Unexpected and cold, where was my mother in all of this? With agility born of desperation, we edged through the chaos, the crowd's anxiety pressing in on us like a heavy fog. Each footstep felt monumental, as if the ground could collapse beneath us at any moment. I could hear the frantic shouts of officials, the rumble of the promises they made. "Lily!" Someone shouted my name again, this time closer, but drowned beneath the mounting cries of panic. I turned instinctively, looking for the source, but only found strangers weaving past me, searching and grasping, every face a mask of fear. What if I was the only one left in the world who hadn't found what she was looking for? Chris pulled me closer. "Focus on us," he insisted, gripping my hand tighter, his urgency reminding me that I wasn't disoriented alone. We were in this together. Then a series of booms echoed around us, thunderous, ominous. I froze, remembering the crashes reported on the perimeter, feeling as if I walked through a nightmare brought to life. The chaos spiraled outward. Panic painted every face, and I could sense the fear gripping the whole shelter like a vice. Chris's eyes bore into mine, filled with so much emotion, a blend of worry, urgency, and something else that felt dangerously close to hope. "Just keep your eyes on me," he said, his voice steadying my trembling heart. I nodded, fiercely pulling together every ounce of strength I had. Together, we fought our way to the exit, where a wave of fresh air granted momentary relief. But as I stepped outside, that relief morphed quickly into dread. Before us lay the world transformed, smoke rising in thick columns against the deepening twilight. The shelter's facade, once our last remaining vestige of safety, now felt like the shadow of despair looming over us. I could see other families, frightened and lost, scrambling to find their loved ones amid the turmoil. A little boy clutched a stuffed bear while his father shouted desperately for his wife. An older woman wept into the arms of a stranger. Then, something caught my eye, movement not far from the periphery, a figure stepping cautiously toward the chaos. My heart lurched as recognition washed over me, and for an instant, I dared to hope again. "Mom?" I breathed, my voice barely a whisper amidst the din. But the figure didn't turn, lost in the darkness like so many others. The shadows shifted, and I caught a glimpse of a woman looking back, or was it my imagination conjuring ghosts of longing? "Keep going, Lily," Chris urged, tugging gently on my hand. "We have to find somewhere safe." I hesitated, my gaze locked on that familiar silhouette, but the pull of his voice anchored me back just enough. If it wasn't her, I couldn't be lost in that madness. Could I? What if she needed me too? As we pressed forward, the sounds of sirens wailed in the distance, blending with the murmurs of frightened families. It was all beginning to feel like a dream, a twisted reflection of reality. Among the backdrop of fear and uncertainty, I held on to my resolve, despite the bitter taste of hope threatening to slip away. But then, as we ventured deeper into this new world of chaos, something unexpected happened. A flicker of kindness emerged amidst the storm, a couple sharing their water with a group of exhausted children, assuring their parents with gentle reassurances. I marveled at how, even in despair, the human spirit could shine through, illuminating paths of empathy and compassion. Then, just as quickly, everything changed again. A loud explosion erupted in the distance, sending a shockwave coursing through the crowd, freezing everyone in place. The air became thick with apprehension as people turned, eyes wide with terror, the reality of danger surging back to the forefront of our minds. And in that moment, a breathless voice called out again, piercing through the cacophony. "Lily, you need to come with me." I swung around to see a shadowy figure rushing forward, their eyes frantic but determined. My heart stopped as they stepped into the flickering light, taking my breath away. It was someone I hadn't expected, someone who wouldn't let me forget that, even in chaos. Ties ran deeper than fear. "Mom?" I gasped, but the answer lay tangled in the tension of the moment, floating uncertainly in the air, just out of my grasp. The question hung there, suspended, pregnant with possibility. Could it really be her this time? The weight of the unknown bore down on my heart as I stood caught between two worlds, the illusion of safety crumbling around me. The figure approached, and in the near darkness, time seemed to stretch impossibly, my eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom?" I repeated, my voice cracking under the weight of hope and fear as the figure drew closer, revealing familiar features marked by worry and resilience. "Lily, we have to move," she urged, urgency tinged with an unmistakable sense of protectiveness. My heart raced, not from the chaos surrounding us but from the overwhelming relief and fear that washed over me. This was no dream. This was real, and she was here, standing in front of me alive. "But you weren't," I started, words tumbling out in confusion. Why had I lost her? Why had it taken so long? The chaos around us faded as I focused solely on her. Every story I had told myself about her absence crashing down like old brittle walls. "Not now. There's no time, Lily." Her voice turned sharp, slicing through my fog of emotions. "Chris, we need to go. Can you help her?" His surprise matched my own, weaving an uncomfortable tension between us. Yeah, of course," he stammered, and the split-second hesitation filled me with doubt. What if the person standing before me wasn't truly her? I needed to believe, to hope, but in that moment, the risk was palpable. Before I could respond, my mother, somehow back in my life after what felt like an eternity, grasped my hand tightly. "I need you to trust me, Lily. We have to regroup. There's safety inside the old library just around the corner. We don't have much time." The urgency in her eyes reignited a familiar fire in my heart, overriding the doubt creeping into my mind. I wanted to trust her, needed to. Chris squeezed my hand reassuringly, grounding me against the tidal wave of emotions. We moved together, a chaotic trio weaving through the remnants of shattered lives and embers glowing in the dusk. Around us, the desperation of others mirrored our own, tangled in the search for connection and safety. Each hurried step brought with it a storm of questions. How did she escape? Why had I thought she was gone forever? But the moment I spent alone, without her, feeling like a shipwreck in an ocean of grief, had equipped me with the ability to recognize the urgency of our situation. There would be time for questions later if we made it out. "Look," my mother said, her voice rising over the din, "we don't have much time before the authorities seal the area. Keep moving." As we rounded the corner near the library, the cacophony of chaos began to intensify, the sounds of sirens growing louder, mingling with the congregation of panicked voices. The library stood ahead, a fortress amidst a sea of uncertainty, seemingly untouched by disaster, an ironic oasis in a brewing storm. The entrance was swarming with people, even more than outside, and desperation filled the air as families rushed past us, driven by instincts sharper than fear itself. I could hardly breathe as the crowd churned, echoes of terrified voices swirling around me. Then, just as we neared the entrance, the distant crack of thunder sent an electric jolt through the crowd. The ground beneath our feet trembled ominously, resonating with a deeper threat, something lurking beneath the surface, threatening to break free. "Everyone, stay calm," an official shouted, but the panic burgeoned anew, sparking wild shouts. Bodies pressed against one another, and for a moment, I lost my footing, our hands separating as people surged forward. "Lily," Chris called, panic flooding his voice as he reached for me. I spun around but found myself surrounded, the crowd engulfing me like a riptide. "Mom!" "Chris!" My voice rose in a desperate cry as I felt the weight of bodies sliding away, an ebbing tide threatening to consume me whole through the sea of faces. I caught a glimpse of my mother's form, disappearing in the swell of chaos. "Don't let go!" I screamed, but the words became lost in frantic pleas as the crowd surged again, an unstoppable force. I clawed my way back, determined to find them, to feel the warmth of their presence again. Fear surged through me, clawing like an animal, feral and relentless. Just as I reached for Chris again, the ground shuddered violently, a thundering resonance ripping through the air. A massive crack split the surface nearby, and the world shifted beneath us, the ground disintegrating into a chasm of fear. The scene morphed into a nightmare, the air thick with dust and debris, the sense of impending doom palpable. Terrified cries rose around me as I struggled to stay upright. People stumbled and fell, their fears erupting into chaos, and just like that, hope slipped beneath the surface, swallowed by the surge of darkness threatening to consume us all. In that moment of sheer terror, as danger edged closer, I locked eyes with Chris through the haze, a shared understanding flickering like a fragile flame against the tempest. Something had fractured within me, but I knew I couldn't let go. I wouldn't lose them again, not when we were so close. And then, in the very eye of the storm, my heart froze amidst the chaos. I realized I was utterly alone. The swirling darkness around me grew, threatening to pull me under as the crowd surged away unseen. I braced myself for the inevitable, hoping against hope that I could still find my way back to them before the very essence of safety crumbled into nothingness. The chaos enveloped me like a thick fog, a swirling mass of frantic bodies and loud, overlapping cries. Each sound pressed against me, suffocating my thoughts and drowning my ability to reason. I grasped at the air, fingers clawing through the smog of humanity, yearning for either familiar warmth or a lifeline. The ground continued to tremble ominously beneath our feet, and I could almost feel the impending doom resonating in my bones. "Mom! Chris!" My voice shattered against the metallic din, swallowed by the panic-stricken crowd. Tears blurred my vision, each droplet a tiny fragment of the hope I had just begun to grasp. My heart raced wildly as I pushed against the throng, desperation lending strength to my limbs, knowing that every second counted. Around me, I saw shades of faces, fear etched into every wrinkle, despair fissured through each gaze. We were all trapped in a vortex of survival instinct, and somehow, in that crowd, we had become as alienated as strangers in a foreign land. As the earth shuddered again, I lost my footing, a knee buckling as I crashed against the cold concrete. "Help!" I cried out, scrambling to the side as I watched the tide of bodies crashing past. No one turned to look. They were all consumed by their own fear, their own struggle for existence. Panicking about partitioned moments, the despair in my heart grew heavier. My mother's face, once a beacon of warmth and familiarity, now felt like a figment, something cruelly taken from me again. A mirage traveling deeper into memory. Chris. I needed him. I didn't even know what state of mind I would find either of them in, but I had to, despite the storm brewing around me. I had to keep searching, pushing against the tide. I began to wade through the fray again, my breath stuttering in sharp gulps. Eyes darting, scanning for any familiar silhouette. I barely registered the sharp elbow that connected with my ribs, forcing me back into the throng. Suddenly, someone reached down, a hand extended through the mayhem. "Come with me." A voice pierced through my bubble of fear. It was a woman, her face adorned with the streaks of dust and worry, but her eyes shone with a glimpse of determination. "You look lost." I hesitated, fear battling against instinct. There was no time to think. I clasped her hand, feeling the warmth radiate through the icy grip of panic tightening around me. "I'm looking for my mom and a friend," I yelled, straining to be heard over the madness. The woman pulled me closer, weaving through desperate bodies, guiding me toward the periphery of the chaos where the entrance loomed like a beacon. "Stay close, we'll get out." Just then, I caught the unmistakable profile of Chris, his shaggy hair standing out amidst the drowning sea of strangers. "Lily!" he shouted, his voice piercing through the frenzy, as if it were a lifeline cast out toward me. "Chris!" I returned, my heart leaping with renewed vigor. But just as that flame began to reignite, another tremor rocked the ground violently. The chaos spiraled anew, and the grip of the woman's hand faltered. I was yanked in different directions as people surged. No, 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 no. Everything turned into a blur. Arms grabbed at me, pulling deep into the swell as my heart sank. I fought against my fears, trying to push through, looking for Chris. For my mother, the very essence of my sanity felt chaotically dispersed, breaking into shards of panic and despair. The ground buckled, the air thickening with dust. I stumbled, falling to one knee, my breath quickening as realization dawned. I was losing my anchors in this chaotic storm. My mother and Chris were slipping away, and I had no way to stop it. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted my mother fighting her way toward me, determination sculpting her features. She was defying everything around her, pulling free from the chaos, and somewhere deep inside me, a flicker of hope ignited. "Lily," she cried, her voice rising like a fragile note amidst the cacophony. "Mom," I roared back, exhilarated by the sight of her approaching. I scrambled to my feet, and suddenly the image of her faded in an instant as the ground shook again. Something nefarious lurked beneath. A loud cracking echoed, and panic spread like wildfire, consuming everything it touched. I barely felt the sting of tears cutting through the dirt on my cheeks. Around us, the desperate cries intensified, and I lost sight of her again, swallowed by the urine tidal wave of fear. And then I remembered. "Chris," I shouted, forcing my voice to break free. "We have to go. I found her." "No, get to safety." His voice was strained and frantic, slipping further away. "Where are you?" My heart hammered, adrenaline coursing through me as I veered toward the spot where I'd last seen him. With every jagged inhale mingled with the stench of panic and dust. The rumbles beneath the ground intensified, a dark omen hovering just above the surface, waiting to unleash its fury. Then it happened. A violent eruption stirred beneath us. The ground split wide in jagged agony, a gaping maw tearing through the earth, swallowing everything in its wake. My instincts screamed to run, but I couldn't let go, not when they were so close. "Lily, trust me," Chris shouted, his voice strained over the chaos. I ran toward him, every heartbeat an echo of blind faith, every step toward the chasm churning inside my chest. But just before I reached him, I stumbled, and in that moment of weakness, disaster struck. I felt myself begin to fall, the world tilting beneath my feet, tipping sideways into an abyss. And then, everything fell silent. As I dangled precariously on the edge, my heart pounding against the backdrop of despair, I searched frantically for anyone to pull me back from the precipice. And in the lifeless silence surrounding me, I took a deep breath, feeling the inevitable rise of loss circle closer and closer. Then, amid the quiet darkness, an unexpected hand brushed against mine, warm, steady, familiar. It was my mother's hand, reaching out to pull me back toward the light, but the ground rumbled, jagged and relentless at that moment. I understood the stakes had grown higher than we could bear, and then, just as I gripped her hand, I heard Chris's voice, fraying with fear just beneath the surface. "Lily, look out." And in that instant of stark dread, as shadows loomed, I knew with dreadful certainty that disaster was no longer an abstract fear. It was clawing its way to meet us. In that suspended moment, where time stretched and fear gripped my heart, I felt the weight of everything I feared to lose crashing down on me. The ground threatened to swallow me whole, and all I could think about was the precarious moment where I hung between life and death, between chaos and resolution. With my mother's hand grasping mine, the world trembled like the tightrope I danced upon. "Lily," Chris's desperate voice echoed like a lifeline, pulling me from the brink of despair. I tightened my grip on my mother's hand, feeling her warmth fill the void of uncertainty rising within me. Her eyes were fierce, resolute, and somehow that gave me strength. I took a deep breath, every sensation amplified as I caught the flicker of hope lying beneath the panic, because we weren't just hanging on the edge. We were tethered together by love and resilience. With one swift motion, my mother pulled me back, staggering towards safer ground while Chris reached for me, his eyes wide with determination. We crashed into each other, embraced in a flurry of relief, confusion, an overwhelming gratitude. The crowd continued to circle around us, but in that moment, it felt as if the storm had paused, granting us a fragile bubble of safety to breathe. "Is everyone okay?" I gasped, glancing around to find the little girl, a tiny beacon of innocence, still searching for her own. But the wind shifted, and in the thickened air, I could sense the frantic pull of anxiety swirl around us. "Where is she?" I breathed, feeling the panic creep back, but Chris stepped forward, scanning the crowd. "I'll find her," he assured me, his voice steadying my racing heart. "Stay here." He moved swiftly, determination coursing through his every step. I turned to my mother, hope mingled with doubt swirling in my chest, demanding answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. "Mom," I said, finally looking at her, "where have you been? How did you make it?" All the questions boiled, longing to erupt, to be heard, but the urgency of the moment clawed at me. The sound of the sirens rang loudly in the distance, mingling with the frantic hustle around us. She brought her hands to my shoulders, her face a mask of warmth and hardness, reminding me of the fight she'd always carried, the unwavering spirit I had missed. "It's a long story, sweetie," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But I promise I'm here now, and we need to stay together." Just then, the ground trembled again, but this time with an ominous rumble, a fractured echo reminding us that the chaos wasn't finished. The echoes twisted in the air, a growling warning, and I started to realize that our fight wasn't simply against losing one another. It was a fight for survival in a world unraveling before our eyes. "Lily." Chris returned at that moment, his eyes wide with urgency. "I found her," she asked back at the shelter. He motioned toward the swirling mass of people, and I felt the rush of fear surge again. How could we have lost her amidst everything? "Come on," Chris urged, clutching my arm before glancing back at my mother. "We have to go." "Are you sure she's all right?" My heart pounded fiercely against my ribcage. "I need to see her." "I'm sure," Chris said, grounding us back to purpose. She clung to my leg, too afraid to move. "She's waiting for you." Against the rising tide of uncertainty, a flicker of determination blazed within me. With Chris and my mother beside me, I raced through the crowd, desperately seeking the familiar face of that little girl, the one who had reminded me of strength even in my darkest moments. And as we edged through the mass, navigating the clamor and debris, my heart hammered with every furtive glance that met my eyes. "There," Chris pointed with a breathless lurch of hope as I spotted her small form standing amidst the chaos, anxiety clear across her rounded features. She trembled like a fragile leaf caught in a storm. "I'll get her," he urged as he squeezed through, and I stayed anchored at the edge, breathless as I watched him bend down and envelop her in his arms. "Lily," she squealed in disbelief, a ray of pure vibrancy among the despondents. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't, I whispered, relief flooding through me as I rushed to her side, wrapping my arms around her small frame. "I'm so glad you're okay." Tears slipped quietly down my face, punctuating the chaos with warmth, a bittersweet reminder of everything we'd endured. Suddenly, my mother was there beside us, her face softened with a mix of concern and love. "We can't stay out in the open," she urged, glancing nervously at the sky that threatened to crack wide open, exposing us to whatever loomed beyond. A wave of unity washed over the three of us, the girlish warmth melting into my mother's reassurance, even as uncertainty whispered that the darkness wasn't finished with us yet. Working together, we created a tight circle around the little girl, helping her steady as shadows loomed not just our individual worries, but a shared fight that chained us all into one. "Stay close," I said, sensing that the world felt different now. It was spinning wildly, caught on the brink of destruction. Yet we were here together, and that alone ignited a fire within me. "We can make it. Together." As we moved, weaving through the remnants of the shelter, adrenaline propelled us forward. Families were gathering now, united in urgency, finding each other amongst the chaos that belied familiar boundaries of safety. Every pained glance, every whispered prayer, resounded like an echo carried in the heavy air, a reminder that while disaster may loom, It could not extinguish the bonds we held dear, and as we broke free from the thrumming noise of the crowd, the flickering outlines of our world narrowed, revealing the library waiting, a sanctuary in the storm. But before we rushed inside, I turned back to take in the faces one last time. The mix of hope, fear, and love shimmering beneath the chaos painted a tapestry of our human experience. Together, I shouted over the din, capturing the indelible truth that fear would try to shatter yet couldn't erase. With the flicker of determination shining brightly, we stepped forward, into the warmth of the library's embrace. My heart steadied for the first time. We would face whatever came, each of us unyielding amid the storm. Because from that moment on, we were not simply survivors. We were a family intersected by fate, a rhythm against the chaos that raged outside. And as the doors closed behind us, enveloping us in a world of safety, I realized that even amidst the darkest shadows, the ties of connection were powerful enough to illuminate the way. Every heartbeat resonated with the promise of resilience and the simple warmth of togetherness. In that sacred space, I breathed in deeply, letting the warmth envelop pain and uncertainty alike. We were not merely defined by the disasters we faced. We were forged together by the hope that still flickered at the heart of our story. "Mom," I whispered, looking into her knowing gaze, "no matter what happens, I promise we'll always find each other, right?" "Always," she answered, her smile breaking through the darkness as fond memories of laughter and stubborn hope filled the air between us. Surrounded by the echoes and affirmations of life, my heart swelled with a certainty that anchored me against the turbulent chaos beyond the knowledge that love could indeed conjure enough light to cut through the darkest of nights. And with a newfound whisper of strength guiding me forward, I realized that we were, forever, the source of each other's hope.